Hey everyone, what's up? So I got some Canelo fans trying to poon jab me in my comment section again. So that just lets me know that you recovered a little bit, you feel a little confident. So, it kind of went radio silent there for a little bit. I was giving you guys a break. But the truth of the matter is, when more and more I think about this fight, like, we got to be honest here. Stylistic wise, what does Canelo bring to the table that's so difficult for Crawford that he hasn't seen before? Be realistic when I ask this question. If you guys want to talk in the comments section, you understand Gamboa had more, tools in his tool bag than a Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion. He had quick feet, athleticism, he had punch selection. Canelo, Canelo does have good, solid punch selection. Let's not go that far. But again, I think Gamboa could land in more types of tight pockets. You know what I'm saying? Uppercuts, a variety of punches. We know that Canelo, for the most part, he has a right hand, and he has a left hook. But he does have uppercuts and things like that as well. But you tend to don't see those punches land in fights against the more skilled opponents that he's fought, like the Floyd Mayweathers, like the, Laura's, the Skull, you know what I'm saying? Like, again, his last fight, Madrimov, to me, Madrimov was a trickier opponent, had more tricks. I called him Tony Hawk in my prediction, which was accurate in that video as well. I was able to tell you guys right off the bat, this is the first time Crawford's going to lose officially 3 rounds. Again, I always call this stuff out, and fools try to come here and act like I'm just some clown, but that's okay. I've gone through this process over and over again. But Canelo, again, I told you, he doesn't really have a true game plan in his fights. He doesn't. He wants to land a big shot. That's his ultimate game plan. And how many times is that going to be successful? You understand? He may catch Crawford. He may even put Crawford down, which, again, Crawford does have some X factors to him that a lot of other people don't have. I think if Crawford does get hurt or knocked down, you know what I'm saying? I think that's going to be a pretty big problem for Canelo. I think you'll see a light switch kind of turn on between Bud, and Bud's going to become more determined. That may be actually more dangerous for Canelo. But at the end of the day, you're dude. And I'm just going to be repeating myself moving forward. You know what I'm saying? His game plan is just to land a big punch that hopefully catches his opponent off guard or whatever else, just like he did versus Berlanga, just like he did with Munguia. After he caught those guys with a big shot, he wasn't able to finish, of course. He was able to finish a guy like Caleb Plant, after knocking him down. But Caleb Plant, we know, has no gas tank. Caleb Plant was getting tired during the media workout, you know what I'm saying? And again, I saw Caleb Plant struggle with Caleb Truax, a guy who was retired, who was literally, the whole cliche chopping wood. And when you watch movies, like Commando, for example, you'll see where the retired person is out in the woods trying to escape civilization and finally free his, clear his mind and everything. The whole cliche chopping wood. That was literally Caleb Truax, you know what I'm saying? But again, we don't see that type of thing come through with more skilled guys, especially guys who know how to punch and move, like Terrence Crawford. Another thing Canelo doesn't really present to the table is he doesn't know how to control distance as well as Terrence Crawford. You saw that in the Skull fight, by the way. A lot of you were freaking out and saying that Canelo is now shot. He's not, he's already out of prime and whatever else, you know what I'm saying? I know you guys are psyching yourselves up today and you're trying to, save face on the internet, but again, what is Canelo going to do when Crawford's doing things using lateral movement, controlling distance, making Canelo guess? This is another thing, and this even occurred for Triple G, which is another hype job. I'm sorry. I don't put these fighters on these pedestals like you guys do. Triple G doesn't have a resume. Again, you'll crap on Crawford's resume, but then act like Triple G was Marvin Hagler and Bernard Hopkins, which he was not. You understand? Not one bit. The dude barely beat Derevyanchenko. You know what I'm saying? You had trouble with Danny Jacobs, okay? All right. Sergio Moro was able to knock down Danny Jacobs, guys, okay? So I'm not going to sit here and play this game of make-believe reality with you guys. The proof is right there in black and white. What has GGG done? But the thing about GGG, yes, he had power, although he was fighting a bunch of 154-pounders and guys like that moving up to try to assist his brand. what made the fight difficult for GGG whenever he faced Canelo, Canelo was faster, things like that. Canelo could counterpunch him, but this made GGG very timid. It's going to be likewise with Canelo Alvarez. You're not going to be able to punch with full confidence like you do in other fights. And even in fights where you have punching bags like Munguia and Berlanga, you understand it's not like, especially as the fight wears on, again, Canelo's power goes down. How many late fight knockouts does he have? You can say the Kovalev fight, but again, there's a lot of craziness to that Kovalev fight. I find it odd when a guy says you're an ignoramus if you bet on me. That's out of his own mouth. You understand? I don't need to really cover that type of situation. But how many late knockouts does Canelo have, especially in his controversial fights, such as like a Laura or something like that, which you guys didn't require him to rematch, by the way. You understand? Again, we can see that his power, it kind of loses things at the end of the fight, even against hittable targets that we've already watched get knocked out, by other guys, Berlanga and Munguia guys. So again, and Crawford, he's not this target where he sits there, he stands and trades with you. I've already gone over this. You're on a tightrope with Crawford. Crawford is going to, once again, try to get you, the battle for the feet alone is like step one. So Canelo, again, not being a true master of distance, I'm sorry, I don't care what you guys say. He's just not. Go watch the Bivol fights, go watch Laura, go watch Floyd. If a guy can move, Canelo's really not that effective. Please watch Skull, do you understand? And Crawford is not the stationary Margarito target that you guys are now claiming that he is, trying to, again, psych yourselves up. But again, Crawford is trying to constantly get guys to get out of position. That's the whole name of the game, and that's just step one. Step two, okay, let's, you finally get in a distance that you feel confident in. You're going to punch and whatever. Crawford's going to punch, try to counter. I believe Crawford is going to beat you to that punch. And it goes back to what I'm saying about GGG. Although GG was the bigger, stronger fighter, when Canelo did fight him, you understand? He was very timid. He was very apprehensive. And it's going to be the same for Canelo, especially as the fight wears on. I did see Bud's physique, you understand, where he looks pretty big. He's looking pretty good right now. My only concern is this. He doesn't need to be, this isn't a machismo fight. And, when I was in the military, one thing that I learned is that stamina is a lot more important than strength. The push-ups became easy and things like that. But, a lot of guys, they get tired during the runs. I was a stamina guy. I could run long distance like it's nothing. And I eventually got to the point where I can easily ace the push-ups and all that crap. But, the sit-ups, whatever else. But it's more so stamina is far more important than strength. The muscle guys, they're, you see oftentimes that a lot of muscle guys, they're not really the best of the best. They can still be top. Like Evander Holyfield, that guy was just a stacked piece of muscle. You understand? And he was a very tough guy to deal with. He was very rugged, kind of like how you people try to act like Canelo Alvarez. Canelo's not really a killer. He doesn't really go in there and just brutalize people. He really doesn't. He wants to be more of a finesse boxer. That's what he really wants to be. But, again, you're dealing with the just battle of the feet right off the bat. You know what I'm saying? And you have trouble with lateral movement. It's just that simple. You don't control distance. You don't really know how to do it. You understand? You're not like this stalker. Even GGG was good at cutting off the ring guys on guys who were moving backwards. And he could stalk people. He usually uses jab to control people, to get people back. And the majority of Triple G's knockouts actually came while the opponents were on the ropes. GGG, although he had slow hand speed, things like that, he was still able to mash shots that were going to land big. Big shots he could kind of mask that opponents, trying to survive on the ropes couldn't anticipate. But if you go back on GGG, you're going to see he was actually, majority of his knockouts were while guys were on the ropes. But Canelo, he's just not like that. Again, you know what I'm saying? You'll watch the Bivol fight. You'll see how Bivol's easily able to escape off the ropes when Canelo has him back in the ropes and things like that. And again, this really comes down to make-believe at the end of the day. Canelo is not who the TV and who you guys say he is. Like I said, again, I don't think you present even as much problems as a Gamboa when it comes to, boxing acumen and things like that, just God-gifted ability and talent. Canelo doesn't really have that. And it always shows when he fights elite opponents. Again, with Floyd Mayweather, I didn't see you win one round, buddy. I didn't see you win one round. You know, even a Castile was able to win multiple rounds off of Floyd Mayweather. You know what I'm saying? And Canelo was not able to do that. You understand? Canelo is going to need to actually be a true Mexican fighter. You're going to have to be rugged. I would use a Maidana type of game plan in this fight, but he's not going to do it because he wants to be a finesse guy. You know what I'm saying? If he did do that, if he was stalking and he was like a Maidana or a Castile, yeah, I would sit here and I would say, yeah, this is going to be a very tough fight for Terrence Bud Crawford. But he's not going to do that. He doesn't want to get out-skilled. He doesn't want to get out-finesse. He wants to show that I have skills and that type of nonsense. You understand? He's not going to use his size just like he did versus Floyd. He doesn't really use his size. You know what I'm saying? He plays a game of, what's the word? Bluff. You know, when you're playing poker or whatever else, you try to act like you have a hand so you can mentally mess with people. And that's more so what he really does. But as far as being a truly bigger guy that gets in there, like a Evander Holyfield, you know, who bullies people and just like manhandles them, you know, that's not Canelo Alvarez. You know what I'm saying? There's not much to really talk about this fight. Again, Canelo doesn't really have a jab again. The only punch I'm worried about is the right hands. That's it. His left hook is going to be taken away from him. His left hand's going to be taken away from him. Crawford doesn't get caught with too many left hands. You know what I'm saying? That's not a punch he necessarily needs to be worried about. The punches that always gave him trouble are awkward overhand rights, you know, whether that was that one Cuban dude, man, I forget these dudes' names. He KO'd him in the 10th round, you know, and after that, that dude's career was pretty much over with. Hank Lundy was another guy. He was able to land a pretty awkward lead right hand, overhand type deal. But the overhand rights, the right hands, those are the punches that are going to give Crawford trouble in this fight. It's not going to be, you know, Canelo's left hand. If Canelo wants to throw that dumb left hand, you know, it works against guys like Berlanga. It works against guys like Triple G. Again, it works against those type of guys. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to work on Terrence Crawford. He's going to take that away from Canelo Alvarez. Canelo's going to have to rely on something else. But again, you don't control distance. You don't have a jab. And again, you don't really have a game plan. Your game plan is to land a big shot. And then it gets to the point again. We just saw this past weekend with, what's his name, Shakur and Zepeda. Zepeda, the first few rounds, he had people thinking that he was robbed because he threw a bunch of volume, especially rounds 3 and 4, where he threw over 100 punches. But once that volume went away, then it made it quite easily discernible to see what's actually going on in that ring. You know, again, but with Canelo, it's kind of the same deal. You know, the first few rounds, he is eventually going to get tired. He's going to try to take off the middle rounds, and then he's going to try to burst again later on the fight, try to land a hard shot. His game plan is not very hard, and his skill set is not really this crazy skill set. It's really not. You know what I'm saying? It's like a Gervonta Tank Davis again. I'm repeating myself. You know, Gervonta doesn't really go in there, set traps. You know, he lets guys kind of beat up on him. Even in the Ryan Garcia fight, Ryan was very aggressive at first. He got too aggressive and he got caught. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, that's because he had confidence. And it was just like the same in Munguia. Munguia was in there and he got too much confidence from the first few rounds. You know, he was like, this is Canelo. I should be doing a lot worse. And he was actually confident because he was actually landing a lot of glove on Canelo. You know, he got too over aggressive and then he got put down. Crawford's not that type of guy. He's more calculated. Again, you're going to be on the tightrope. That's step one. Again, Crawford is a master at distance and judging distance. You understand? Once you throw a few couple left hooks and then your right hands, and once Crawford has a measurement on what you bring to the table, then he can really start going to work and putting in some more work in there and start even trying things, incorporating the uppercuts, which is going to be a very good punch that he'll be able to land in this fight, by the way. And he, you know, even lead uppercuts. You know what I'm saying? That punch that he landed on Benavidez, that was actually a lead uppercut. You understand? To still get that type of power and torque on your shot with it being a lead is insane. And we talked about what's it called, anchor punch that he landed on Brook, those types of things. Again, it's going to be a matter of thinking in this fight. It's not a matter of brute strength versus brute strength, which Crawford does need to watch out because he needs to be, you know, the alpha male. He's like Godzilla. He needs to always show everyone that he's the alpha. In this fight, you don't necessarily need to do that, although he does have a huge advantage there. Canelo doesn't really have a clinch game. You know, if Crawford does need to hold on, especially if he gets hurt, things like that, he'll definitely be the more experienced fighter in that regard with his wrestling background. You know, Canelo's a guy, again, I never see him really clinch. I never really see him bully people. You know what I'm saying? He likes to just keep it where both guys are standing in front of each other. That's where he feels most comfortable. But, you know, even to Andre Ward, after he got hurt by, what's his name, Kovalev, you know, Andre Ward became a bully. It was a scrappy, ugly fight. But he went in there and he started bullying Kovalev, man. By any means necessary, I'm going to get this W on you. You know what I'm saying? And again, I've never seen Canelo really have to resort to those type of brutish tactics. You know, and I don't think it's going to happen in this fight. Again, people are now questioning Canelo's power. Again, I found his power to be quite inconsistent throughout his career. So, again, unless he lands plush with a shot that Crawford doesn't see, I'm not too worried about his power. Crawford just needs to be at a strength where he's able to effectively block Canelo shots, you know, because Canelo's going to be aiming for that arm when he can't hit the head, especially as he gets more frustrated as time goes on. But I see this as a very boring fight. It's going to be anticlimactic. You know, another overrated fighter is just going to get exposed in this thing. Everyone that you put on a pedestal, which is all Canelo is, you know, he's not who you guys say he is. He's just not the truth. And we all know this. And you guys know this too, Canelo fans. You know, I was going to wait a little while longer before I beat a dead horse. But again, you're not going to control the distance on Crawford. You don't know how to. It's not part of your repertoire. Again, you're not really this brutish bully type fighter. Like, you know, even the example I gave, how Andre Ward adjusted in that fight versus Kovalev and just went insane, made it into a scrap. You understand? I've never seen Canelo do that in a fight. Again, plus you look at even the skulls and whatever else, the Lauras, you know, it's just something he doesn't know how to do. He doesn't really know how to control distance and things like that. You know, even with Amir Khan, you know, he did time him in the middle of the ring when he knocked him out with that shot. But Crawford's a little different. We know that Amir Khan's a broken record. He eventually gets timed, even by guys like Danny Garcia. So that's always been a consistent in his career. But Crawford, again, he's a guy, he keeps you guessing all night what he's going to do. And he is a gobstopper, unfortunately. His style depends on his opponent. And I believe Canelo's an easy enough opponent to craft, you know, a certain tool or weapon that you'll need to dismantle him and defeat him, just like he's always done in his career. You know, Crawford's a very cerebral fighter. He's a very adaptive fighter. Again, Canelo can't adapt, guys. I'm sorry. When you face an opponent who's too skilled for you, he doesn't know how to adapt. He only knows how to be more stubborn. Again, I don't see this crazy, ridiculous game planning and, you know, skills that Canelo truly has. You know, that's this unsolvable puzzle that Crawford is going to just have a crazy time to deal with, guys. I think this fight is overrated, like most. And I think it is going to be anticlimactic. It's going to be a lot like the Madrimov fight. And in fact, what's crazy is you guys keep bringing up Madrimov. And I'm wondering, is this dude even going to do as good as Madrimov? You know what I'm saying? The only thing that's going to be the bigger problem, you know, because I already given you guys my prediction a long time ago. I did this way months in advance, before this fight was even announced, by the way. And I think I repeated myself twice and made 2 videos on it. But are you going to do better than Madrimov? Again, the only thing that's going to cover that ground to assist Canelo is, of course, the judging and other factors such as that. The only plus that I do see working in Canelo's favor right now is we've not heard from him. We've not seen him. You know, Crawford, he's out in the media and he's doing his thing. Although Crawford's a professional, I don't have to worry about Crawford. I don't have to be concerned if Crawford is out drinking and partying and things like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to worry about that type of stuff with Crawford. But I see that Canelo definitely is taking this very seriously. You know what I'm saying? He's definitely juicing it up right now, and he's definitely cycling right now, for sure. You know, he's in that gym right now, and he's hugging all those trees and doing his breathing techniques right. And that's a good thing. That's a good positive thing that I can say that Canelo's definitely doing correct right now. He's taking this fight very seriously, as he should. But as far as the juicing, again, I'm not too concerned about it. It's not going to give him skills. You know, man, I keep forgetting these dudes' names, man, because I don't keep up with boxing that much anymore. But when Oscar De La Hoya fought old boy that was on the steroids, who also fought Tito Trinidad, Fernando Vargas, Fernando Vargas was a very good technical fighter, by the way, FYI. I think Fernando Vargas in this era, he would definitely beat guys like Spence and Thurman. You know what I'm saying? Fernando Vargas gets a lot of hate, but he did get busted for steroids versus Oscar, and it didn't help him out. And this is going to be one of those situations where Canelo, he's a solid fighter, but you guys have just overrated him, man. You have. You know what I'm saying? He's going to be in a different fight that he's not used to. It's a different atmosphere. It's not controlled how he normally likes it, like a Jake Paul likes to control everything to the T, where don't try to knock me out, things like that. He's learned all that from Canelo. This is going to be a fight where this isn't careful selective matchmaking. You think it's a cherry pick, but again, you know that you're already in the ring with the real one. I've already seen concern on Canelo's face and things like that. He's in there juicing it up and he's working hard, and that's a good thing. I hope he really comes in very brutish, because again, once the fatigue starts to set in on Canelo, that's when it's really going to be all bad, just like it was for Zepeda this past weekend. And Canelo, he's not even really an active fighter. Even if Canelo can kind of fatigue bomb him early on to kind of get him to expend himself, it's only going to work out more for him later on as the fight goes on. You know what I'm saying? There is another thing that Crawford needs to watch out for. Felix Diaz, that's the dude's name, man. Felix Diaz. Crawford has his tendency in the mid-rounds to get caught with a punch. He kind of gets lulled to sleep. You know what I'm saying? It happened versus Felix Diaz. It happened versus Vandremov. It's happened and I believe it happened in the Jean fight too. It's been a while since I covered all this film and everything. But around the middle rounds, around round 8 to round 10, there's an opportunity for Canelo to land a hard shot on Crawford. Crawford does get lulled to sleep. He's typically had the fighter filled out. He's dominating at that point. He does get lulled to sleep from time to time, and he gets caught with a big shot. And if Crawford doesn't get knocked down or hurt in the early rounds, he's definitely bone macking them. They're going to need to remind him this is something that does happen to you, and it's happened consistently across your career. And Canelo, again, he is a guy who likes to, once again, at the end of the day, just try to land a big shot. And Crawford's going to need to watch out for that, especially if he is feeling comfortable and he is lulled to sleep a little bit. That is a tendency and pattern that does happen to Crawford, like I said. But again, the more and more as the fight goes on, Canelo's muscles are going to wear out. Again, hopefully Crawford, again, is not focusing too much on strength training. The stamina is still more important than the strength. You got to hit a nice little sweet spot where you can still make sure that you have more energy than Canelo by the end of the fight. You don't want to be a bodybuilder, because that would be playing right into Canelo's hands, to be quite frank. Floyd Mayweather had the correct approach. You know what I'm saying? He was still light, he was still limber and things like that, still agile. Crawford is still going to want to maintain that in this fight, and that's more important, the stamina and things like that, than actually being strong. And he doesn't need to challenge Canelo in a game of machismo, strength versus strength, and you don't need to wrestle Canelo. You know what I'm saying? Use it smartly when it's good to use it, just to throw Canelo off, but it's not something that you really need to rely off of. You know what I'm saying? Again, we don't need a battle of egos. We need a battle of victory in this fight. But again, it comes down to Canelo just not being who you guys say he is. It comes down to Canelo being a little propped it up. Again, you guys try to make these GGGs out to be that they're Bernard Hopkins and Marvin Haglers when they're not. And it's no different with the Canelo Alvarez, unfortunately. And again, skill-wise, you have maybe 3 tools, maybe 4 if you're really, stretching it, as far as variety and things like that. But at the end of the day, Canelo becomes a broken record quite easily. And he'll do the same thing, miss the same winging shots, just like you saw in Skull, just like you saw in Floyd, just like you saw in Bivol. Although with Bivol, he landed more of those shoulder punches, arm punches, But against the guys like Skulls, Lower, Floyds, you've seen him whiz air all night, hitting ropes and whatever else. You're going to see that same thing. happen in this fight as well. Also, you're going to see the frustration. Canelo gets frustrated a lot, guys. He really does, especially when he's losing. And it weighs down on him more when he knows that he's not looking good and winning. It does play with his mind more because this is what he's built up as a fighter. It's the machine that gives him his confidence. It's the machine that validates his existence and his greatness. You know, and when even the machine's unable, you know, with commentary, they're going to once again try to screw with people's, the way they view this fight. But in Canelo's mind, when he's getting outboxed, getting hit with clean shots that he can't see coming, shots that he's normally not used to seeing, especially since you've been fighting these way bigger guys whose punches you can see coming a lot more easier than the smaller fighters like a Floyd and whoever else. You know what I'm saying? It's going to play with his head, and he is going to get frustrated in this fight as well. Guys, there's nothing really to deter me on this fight. I think majority of us know how this is going to play out. Canelo can only win through robbery or letting out a knockout punch. Even when he knocks guys down, he's not necessarily that great of a finisher. I'm sorry. It's just a fact, guys. You know, his shots have mostly been kind of one-punch KO type punches. You know, but when he's in that position where he needs to finish, the only one I can think of is, you know, Caleb Plant. And that's a guy, again, who had trouble with a guy like Caleb Truax, who was retired for how many years and living in the snow and whatever else. You know, a guy who probably wasn't even thinking about boxing when he was called, you know, to come and fight Caleb Plant. You know, everybody's comparing him to Billy Joe Sanders again. I think that's a poor comparison. You know, Billy Joe Sanders, again, he's a good fighter. You know, I'm not trying to put him down, but he definitely was not dedicated, definitely into some weird stuff like drugs and things like that. So, again, I don't know, guys. Again, I don't know, you guys try to psych yourselves up on the internet if it's really going to grant Canelo skills that he never really has showcased over the span of his career. It's good, again, that he's just in the gym and he's focusing on this fight. That's very good. It's a good thing I'm not seeing him out in the public, although I see Reynoso trying to defend himself with his camp, and, you know, he's trying to distance himself from that controversy. But again, you know, we know they're juicing it up. We know that Reynoso is doing damage control. But as far as Canelo being in the gym and being focused, that's definitely a positive. You know, that's about the only positive I can give your fighter right now. Again, with Crawford, in ending this video, he still needs to prioritize stamina, agility, and those types of things. Those are going to be more help to him than actually strength and muscle at the end of the day. And that's all I really got to say for now, guys. We'll come out with another video later. Bye.